calmness so that they can show up in an authentic way when they're there, when you come in to get some assistance for whatever your pain is, right? And so it's, like I said in the beginning, it's a whole lot deeper than that, but what we have to do is we have to go back to who we are and step into those roles and tap into our ancestors. Everybody said, and I talked about this when I have people who come to see me to heal. Everybody swears up and down that they have a guardian angel. And you do. You have several of them. But, the only time you ever talk about your guardian angel generally is when you're just getting out of that trauma that you've been in, right? And says, oh, thank God, thank you, Jesus. Instead of practicing that on a daily basis so that when you tap into them, they can be there for you. But it's really, really difficult because we have all these other gadgets that keep us away from understanding who we are. I mean, we go to the hospital, we go to the clinic to get health care. We don't go there to heal. And, our body is designed to heal itself. Always has been. So we have to.
Got to move on.
All right,
Okay. This is going to be actually the last question that we can take. And before we do that, I do just want to acknowledge that we've been joined by our interim president here at Roxbury Community College. I hope that's working. I don't know that it is. Let's take.
Good afternoon.
Yes.
I was just going to ask a question relevant to Black women and Black women's health in the city of Boston. Myself, my mother had passed in 2017 from obesity, hypertension, and also she was misdiagnosed and overly medicated. At the time of her death, she actually was on 12 to 14 different medications with side effects. So I wanted to ask a question around the over-medication of Black women in health and also the misdiagnosis and the side effects that come from over-medicating women of color and how that impacts families and communities.
Yeah, I guess one thing that I wanted to add was just I think there's a lot of, as we've touched on, lack of education for healthcare providers, and they're not necessarily knowledgeable, and I think there's still a lot of disparities, and a lot of healthcare providers don't necessarily do a personal assessment of their biases, and there's a lot of misbeliefs about how people of color feel pain and over-treating or under-treating, and I think there just needs to be a lot more cultural competency and humility around people they're prescribing for in the communities they're working in, and kind of just fostering those relationships, like having outreach events like this. I've worked with churches in the past who have providers come do free screenings just to kind of build that relationship, and it's a lot easier to care for someone when you know someone.
So, I have two sisters and a mother who died from obesity. My mother died when I was 13 days old. My sister, my best friend, died when I was 33 years old. And then I had another sister who was another very dear friend of mine who died when I was around 43, 44 years old. All of them. My youngest sister, she was 5'10", she weighed every bit close to 500 pounds. I had another sister who was 5'7", she weighed in the 400s. And I don't know how big my mother was, but everybody says that she was a big woman. That's a nice way of saying that she was morbidly obese. Okay. Here's what we need to know, and here's what we have to do. Number one, between Melina Cass and the Milton line, there are no healthy stores to get food from. 95% of those stores, they sell unhealthy food. Okay? The only way that you're going to fight obesity, the only way that you're going to fight mental health is through food. I promise you that food, if we eat healthy, we are going to eradicate 90 90% of all of our illnesses. Heart disease is the #1 cause of death. That's all food. Okay, so there's no medicine that's going to heal you from obesity. It's food that's going to heal you from obesity. Whole food, organic food, food from the ground, not the stuff that's sitting in these bodegas and these 7-Elevens and these corner stores. You have to eat a regular diet of whole food nutrition. I help people with food to heal their heartbeat, the rhythm of their heartbeat, mental illness issues, and bone structure issues.
And you're absolutely right, but it gets a little bit more complicated, which you know, because you've got to have money to buy food, and you have to have money to buy the right food. Health is expensive in this country. That's just a fact. And I know that if we could get healthy food in our neighborhoods, we could have gardens. I understand what you're saying, but I just think the realistic.
We spend a lot more money on preservatives than we can on.
Clearly,
natural.
there's no argument here. I'm just saying we live in food deserts because we are poor people.
No, we live in food deserts because we don't put our foot down in demand fast.
I would say people do. There are people in this room who I know who are arguing, who are fighting, who are pushing. I think actually to your point, healthy diets are something that we should demand. We also know there's systemic brokenness in our government, right? And oversight at the FDA, oversight at the USDA. I mean, we're talking about, this is big business as well. And so when we're talking about healing, we have to heal systems that have always been fractured, that have continued to oppress, continue to limit, continue to put people in situations and dynamics that, as you've already articulated, were not were for the good or intended for us. As we think about slavery, and the beauty of our people and the beauty of these communities is that in the face of those issues, we were able to still have power and resilience and strength and figure out how to survive. And so I think the Enlightenment is how do we begin to fix broken systems. That's why I'm thankful my brother Jose is in the position he's in, because we can start to hold accountable, because we know that he cares, he intends to help fix the systems in this city, and he has the information. He heard it straight from you. We need healthier food between Melnia, Cass, and Warren, and all the other streets in our neighborhood, and we can begin to do that. I think we have to start at some point saying we can do it, but we have to acknowledge that we are in the face of a real problem. And there are powers and principalities that are fighting against us, are fighting against our health, fighting against our wholeness, fighting against the good that we want to do for ourselves. And we are going to fight. We are resilient. But I do think we have to acknowledge that this isn't just a personal choice issue. People have been forced into bad choices, and we have to help in many ways alleviate that and give them more options in our community. That's my prayer through this conversation, that we can come together and do that as well.
I just came back from the fireside chat that, I'm sorry, your name again. Dr. G. Scott. And there were 2 panelists there from 2 major hospitals, white, and they said, and I wanted to jump for joy when they said, one of the reasons why some of these things aren't happening is because you don't demand it. And is that right? Is that what he said? One of the reasons why. But see, the power that we have, the power of your ancestry, you got to tap into it, folks. Okay, I agree. I would say first, from a grassroots level, you get coalitions for Roxbury, you get a coalition for Dorchester, you get a coalition in groups for Mattapan. And you say, look, we need healthy food. We need healthy food. And you continue to stomp your feet, and you talk to the powers that be. You got representatives in there, you got senators, you have, state representatives, you have council people. right? And then you have business people, you know, and if you stop purchasing those foods, and I mean, hey, I'm sorry, but, you know, one of the good things that we can do is fast, okay? And if you fast for 7 days, or if you fast for 3 days, or if you fast for a day, and you march and you let people, I mean, people in prison are fasting because they get unhealthy food. How come you can't? You're out here.
One thing that I think would be helpful as well is looking at the schools. I think we saw during COVID how many children, sometimes that's the only meals they get are at school. So to push for healthier foods in schools, I think is a good place to start, as well as we've seen a lot of eating habits, exercise habits are formed in childhood. So if you're teaching and promoting health from a young age, it's a lot easier for them to carry those habits into adulthood as well.
So unfortunately, I'm not going to add anything to this discussion. I'm just provide my closing remarks if that's okay. And what I'd just like to share, just so amplify some of the people in this room. And if you think about coalitions, I mean, Diane, the work that you did around COVID, if you think about that, that's something that you could springboard off of, right? So just to name it, but as we talk about trusting systems, I do want to name that my pediatrician has a baby is sitting in this room today. So Dr. White Hammond is my pediatrician. So if we think about trust, the trust that my parents had in trusting this wonderful spirit to care for me and my needs, and there's a reason why I'm here today. So if you ever need a commercial, that's the reason to the wonderful work that you do, and I just want to give and just send my gratitude to make sure you have your flowers, right, in real time. And for the many city residents that you've been able to provide services to as well. As we speak about trusting the system as well, we know that we're gonna talk about generational, right? Because folks, you know it, like there's more money in the illness than there is in healing, right? And so there are those larger systems that are oppressing that intentionally and making sure that we don't have the access to this information, that if you are thinking in a survival mode, you can't think long term. My brother Carl, I love everything that you're sharing, right? But to even think about fasting for a lot of folks, that's not a reality, right? It's the day-to-day reality. We could definitely talk offline. I can hear you speak all day, but just even thinking about that just in terms, right? So just in terms of what people's reality is, a lot of that, they don't have those options, right? So as we think about systemic change, a lot of that's going to take trust and time, right? The people who you either elect, and hopefully people are moving with your feet and voting and making sure you get the right people in office, right? To make sure that they're upholding your values and what is important to your communities and your cities, your states, and your government, to say, hey, this is a system that needs to change. I trust these people. I'm being empathetic and grace and provide a little bit of grace to make sure that they have the time and space to lead and actually make the change that we need to see, because there are a lot of forces up against them as well. So I just need to acknowledge that. So trusting the system and the time that it takes for that. Last but not least, trusting each other, right? And I'll share this because Reverend Broderick and I, had a conversation before this, and it was really deep, and I just wanted to acknowledge some folks. He has since left, whatever. We talked about mentors, right? Brother Thaddeus Miles, for the folks that know Thaddeus, has been a mentor in my life for the past 15 years, and I'm so thankful, again, right? Friendships, other friends that in leadership position, Willie and I, we talk and just say, hey, what's going on? How's everything at work? Eric Estevez, who's in the back of the room, Pops, shout out to Pops. In his friendship, and he and I were able to grab lunch a couple weeks ago, and able to sit down and talk through these same exact challenges, right? And so, but once again, having this trust and being vulnerable in the space of leadership. Shout out to you, Eric. I just wanted to just give you flowers as well for all the work that you've done, and now being executive director of Main Streets. Gotta put it out there, gotta put it out there, because it's extremely important, right? And that we build that trust. And I was thinking about a video I just saw of Deion Sanders and Michael Irvin. I don't know if y'all seen that. It was beautiful, right? Where he just shared the appreciation that he had for each other, and as men, especially men of color, to be vulnerable in that space and be able to say exactly what they shared. And he basically said, thank you, right? And it led to the two of them being in tears. And it was so moving because oftentimes we're not allowed to be in that space of healing, of saying thank you, or being vulnerable enough to strip down to say, hey, I see you. And that's what it's going to be, the trusting each other. Like, I see me in you, right? I see I see the humanness in each other, right? Like I trust that you are walking this path, that you are aiming towards whatever's best for you, and I am here and supportive in whatever way I need to be for that sole purpose, right? So that trusting of each other, trusting the community is going to take a lot of work, but it's all rooted in that love that we circled back on and talked about earlier. So I just want to end on that. Nothing else is added to say, but just thank you once again and just give my gratitude in that way. So thank you.
Let's just not leave this place without working together. Let's get to know somebody in this room. Thank y'all for bringing us together, Doc. But let's start to work in coalitions together. I know there are folks speaking up. I see your power. I see your advocacy. I see the things that you've got. I see Cheryl here. She's been talking about voting a long time. A big part of this, right, is actually taking the power back. And not just about the power of our ancestors, but the power that we have right now. We have power right now. I believe that we can get there. I know we can get there. With prayer, with faith, we can fix broken systems that affect broken people and hopefully be whole together. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank you all for being here. I'm going to turn it over to you, Makiba, but just to say, we are kind of singing to the choir here, because I see all these faces, and these people are already doing the work. So my parting words would be, don't get weary, because you're already doing it, right? And you know, the things that Brother Carl talked about, it's like, well, we did that, and we have had that coalition, and so you kind of get weary, because we're still out here, and for some of us, longer than ever. But to your point, this can be done. And this is never to be underestimated, just meeting here today. So thank you all. Dr. Makiba?
A big round of applause one more time for these folks. Thank you so much. I want to invite all of you to stay with us for a little bit longer if you have the time. We have one more convening happening around Black Joy in this room, probably in about 10 minutes, and that will be the conclusion of our day. So you're welcome to stay, and we would love to have you. Thank you.